The following program contains violence, disturbing imagery, nudity, and, oh my god, why are you even watching this? Just run away. This shit is going to give you nightmares.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Untold Archives and Cryptid Confessions. Here's your host, North Bliskin.
All right. Thank you, Lurch. I appreciate that. Howdy, people. Thanks for tuning in to Untold Archives. I sincerely hope you're having a kick-ass day today. Today's episode's awesome. Comes from a cat named Mark Marinelli. He's cool as hell, and despite his fear of being ridiculed, he was willing to spill his guts on this story. Without further ado, I present to you The Silence and the Smell.
I was cutting down trees. It was a summer night. I had a campsite next to the acre that I cleared out of the woods where the house was going to be built. And at the end of the day, I kept a bottle of water up in the tree, heating in the sun to take a shower. I made it really homey. I had a fire pit with rocks lining it, and the tent. And I had another tent where I kept all my tools and everything, and barbecued. And I was making a lot of noise. I had a radio on with the Tigers game on, and I had my guitar and a harmonica, and I was playing really loud and having a good old time, enjoying myself. And around 11 o'clock, I heard what sounded like people walking around the campsite, and they had to be big people because a few times I actually felt the ground shaking. I mean, they were snapping branches and stepping on limbs and just walking around, and this overwhelming stench that was kind of like a cross between a dead skunk, a wet dog, and feces is the best way I could describe it. And I thought maybe it was the wood in the fire pit because a lot of it had moss and lichens on it and things like that. And I didn't think much of it, but it was really strong, and all this activity walking around, and I knew the biggest animal on that property was a deer. There weren't bears in the area in this part of the state. So I thought it was some of my buddies out there trying to scare me, right? So I took my flashlight, and I'm shining it in the woods, trying to locate them, and I said, all right, you guys, I know you're out there. Come on, you want a beer? You're not scaring me. And it wasn't them. Nobody said anything, and all the noises kept continuing, and I turned around, and I put the flashlight down, and I got hit in the back with an acorn. I thought, well, okay, acorns fall out of trees. No big deal. Then I got hit in the neck with a little pebble. And then I just started getting bombed with stuff, little bits of bark and twigs and little rocks and nuts, shells, and I thought, what is going on? And I walked over to the south side of the campsite, and I'm getting pelted with stuff. I walk over to the north side of the campsite, and the pelting followed, and I'm getting pelted with more stuff. And just out of frustration, I yelled out, what the hell is this? And I hear voices coming from all directions, not human voices, but if you've seen the cartoons, the chipmunks, that high-speed talking, that kind of chipmunky sound of kind of voice, I'm hearing, what the hell is this? What the hell is this? What the hell is this? They're mocking me, and I'm like, okay, this has got to be humans. Deer don't talk. So I thought it must be some kids, local kids saw me coming out here, and they followed me out here, and they're just messing around. And I thought, all right, I'm going to scare them. So I went over to the tent, and I pulled out my shotgun, and I said, all right, you kid, better get out of here. And I pulled back the chuck, and I fired around straight up into the sky. And then the sound, the screams, like roaring screams that were so loud that the hair on my arms stood out. And I played in a band. I've heard no stranger to loud music. This was way louder. I hazard to say 160 decibels. I've never heard anything like this. And I just didn't know what to do. And I hear this stampeding running away from the campsite. And you could hear feet. It sounded like bipedal animals or something was running. But they all ran in different directions. It slowly diminished. They got farther away. And it was just an eerie silence after that. And I sat down on a stump, and my heart was pounding so hard I thought it was going to break right through my ribs. And I couldn't breathe. And I just sat there for a while until I calmed down a little bit. And I just had no idea what just happened. I was just overwhelmed. I didn't know what to think. So I drank all the rest of the beer and got in the tent and went to sleep. And I thought, tomorrow's another day, you know. So about 6:30 a.m. the next morning, I wake up and I hear beer cans clanking and this chattering sound like the chipmunks again, or maybe a better description is Chinese women arguing is what it sounded like. And it wasn't until I heard later the Sierra sounds, that tape. I forget the guy's name who made it, but it sounded like that, chattering. And I'm thinking, wow, what the heck? And I'm just laying there. I'm laying on the ground in the sleeping bag, and I hear and can feel something walking over towards my tent. I grabbed the gun. I'm just laying there, and the zipper on the flap to the tent is jiggling. And there's mumbling, this mumbling and heavy breathing, like Darth Vader with phlegm in his lungs. I mean, just this wet breathe, like that. Whatever it is, it's trying to open the zipper of the tent. And I'm just laying there holding on to that shotgun, and it started to unzip. And I just screamed. I pardon me, I'm going to skip the swear words, but there was a lot of them. And I just, dang, what the, you know. And I started to stand up. I was going to look out of, there's a mesh window on the top of the tent, like a skylight. And I was going to stand up and look out of that. And as I'm standing up, I hear something running away, and the ground, boom, boom, boom. Every step, the ground's just shaking, and it's mumbling and chattering. And I just looked out the top of the tent, and I saw something black dart behind an oak tree. I sat back down, and I waited about 10 or 15 minutes, and I got out of the tent. The campsite was trashed, beer cans. They'd taken the cooler and dumped it, and all the beer cans were torn up. The fire pit, all the ashes and logs were kicked out of the fire pit. I had it rimmed with rocks. They were all kicked around. One of them was at least 100 pounds, and that thing was embedded into the ground, like something got on it and jumped on it, and it sunk down into the ground. It must have taken a lot of weight for that to happen. My radio was smashed against a tree, looked like. Something picked it up and smashed it. And my guitar was gone. They made off with my favorite campfire guitar. But I didn't see any footprints or anything. I had no idea what it was. I didn't see anything. All I know is what I heard the night before and all this damage. I had to go up north with my girlfriend, and I had to leave right away. So I just packed everything up in the tent and left. And I never said a word to anybody about it. That was the first encounter, but I didn't see anything. we were at the point where the house was framed and the sheathing was on and the roof was on, and I was inside doing the electrical, pulling wire and installing switches and receptacles and things like that. I walked through the living room at the back of the house. There's a big picture window and a door wall facing the backyard. And I walked through that room, and I just happened to glance out the window while I was walking by it. And I saw what I thought was this giant black thing walking through the backyard. And I stopped when I went past the window, and I backed up, and I looked again, and I didn't see anything in the yard. And I thought, oh, okay, well, maybe it was a flock of crows or something. You know, I don't know what it was. So I ignored it, and I went out the front door to have a smoke. I stepped off the deck into the front yard, and I'm standing there looking into the woods in the front, and I hear this loud growl, like this deep, loud growl. I turned around, and I saw a 9-foot-tall, mannish-looking ape thing, and it was walking into the woods. I saw it for about 3 or 4 seconds. I saw it take about 3 steps, and it was looking at me, but it was walking the other direction. It had its mouth open, its teeth were bared, and it was growling, and it had a nasty look on its face, like it was not happy that I was there. And I just stood there and looked at it and watched it go into the woods, and I'm standing there, and I could see it walking away into the game preserve on the north side of my house. I could just see a glimpse of it every now and then through the trees as it was walking away. And I'm standing there and I'm like, okay, that's it. It's a Bigfoot. That's what I saw that night. That's what was at the camp. I didn't see, but that's what was around my campsite that night. And that's what's been leaving all these footprints and the scat and what's been taking my tools and howling at night and all the noises I've been hearing. It's got to be that thing. And I'm just standing there, and I didn't know what to do, and I'm watching it walk away, and it's getting farther away, and I'm thinking, I have got to go after this thing, and I've got to get another look at it, because this is one of those things where if I don't do something, it's going to bug me. You know, I really got to go after this thing. So I started running after it. I didn't know what I was going to do if I caught it. I think I waited till it was far enough away that I wasn't going to catch it. I just wanted to get another look at it. So I'm running after it. It's walking fast, and it went over a ridge and down the other side of a hill and disappeared. And I stopped, and I thought, well, I'm not going over that hill. It could be waiting for me on the other side of the hill. So I just turned around and went back to the house and got all my guns out and loaded them up, and I put one by every door just in case, and tried to come to terms with what I had just seen. Coming out of the house to go to work. Usually in the morning, the birds are singing very loudly. There's a lot of birds in these woods. Sometimes they even wake you up in the morning. But this day, it was totally quiet, eerily quiet. The smell was in the air. It's a distinctive smell, and I'm thinking, okay, there was either a Sasquatch was here, or there's one here now. And I'm standing on the end of the deck, looking around the woods, and I hear to the right of me this shout. Something shouted. Something. It wasn't English. And I look over that way, and I see this Sasquatch running down the hill through the brush. And I could just see its top of its back and its arms and the back of its head, and it's running, pushing bushes and trees out of the way while it's going, and it's running down towards where the swamp is. So I walked over there. I thought maybe I could get a better look at it. I walked over there, and I'm standing there trying to see it, and I had this overwhelming feeling that something was watching me. I turned around and looked back at the deck where I was just standing, and there's one standing. There was an oak tree right near the deck, and it was standing behind the oak tree. And it's standing there looking at me, and it didn't run away. It just stood there. And it had this look on its face like a smirk, like it was very amused that this little human was out watching its friend run down the hill. And that was the best look I got. I mean, that was the closest I ever got to one. And it was a female. Like I said, it was about 8 feet tall. It was grayish black. I could see scratches and scars all over its face. It looked a lot like the other ones I'd seen. It was just huge. I always told myself, one of these days I'm going to have an encounter where I'm going to be face to face with one, and I'm going to try to communicate with it. I'm going to wave, or I'm going to put my hands up and make a peace sign or something like that. You know, I'm going to try to do something like that. And all I could do was blurt out, "What the I got to go to work now." And I started walking. It was where I had to walk, so I went back around the other side of the house to get to the other side of the house where my truck was. And I made sure that I didn't run, because animals sometimes think you're supper when you run away. So I walked quickly, and I'm looking at it, and I'm walking around the house. And as I'm going, I'm hearing in that chipmunk voice, "What the, what the, what the," like that. And what sounded like laughing, like a dog, the sound a dog will make. Sometimes when you look at a dog and you think it's laughing, it's really happy, and you're playing with it, it'll make that kind of like breathy sound, like a chuffing sound like that. And that's what they were doing. That one and the one that was down in the swamp, they were laughing, and I didn't care. I just got in my truck and I hauled out of there, and I went to work. I'll never forget driving to work that day. I mean, I just couldn't think of anything else. And all day at work, I kept thinking, man, I'm going to go home and my house is going to be trashed. But when I got home, everything was fine.
That's a squatch.